Well, good morning, Rotary District 7770, and welcome to Conversations with Rotary Action People for Monday, August 17th. My name is Donald Hovis from the Chicora Rotary Club in Myrtle Beach and your CWRAP host. We are pleased to be joined this morning by Rhonda Hunsinger. Good morning, Rhonda.
Good morning. How are you doing?
Wonderful, thank you. We will get to you and the questions I have for you in just a moment. But I will kick us off with the vision statement of Rotary. Together, we seal where will people unite and take action to create lasting change across the globe, in our communities, and in ourselves. Introducing my fellow CWRAP team, our public image chair from our wonderful Rotary District from the 5 Points Rotary Club in Columbia. She is currently on vacation and very dedicated to Rotary, Miss Mary Gass. Good morning, Mary. And our district communications officer from the Somerville Evening Rotary Club in Somerville, South Carolina, Mr. Terry Moore. Good morning, Terry. Thanks for controlling everything for us. Now, guys, Rhonda is, are you the executive director for the South Carolina Philharmonic?
Correct.
Okay, so that's what we're going to be discussing today. So how about answer this first question for us, which will give everyone more information. I know nothing about this, so I'm actually excited to learn a little bit about this. So I understand you are a nonprofit organization. So how does the South Carolina Philharmonic operate?
Well, most orchestras in the United States are nonprofit organizations. I don't know if a lot of people realize that. So we depend very heavily on fundraising to survive. And we do sell tickets to concerts, which that also helps our income. And we receive grants from our cities and counties and the state. But mainly we survive with donations on an annual basis. And we have a good, strong base of supporters that watch over us. Probably a little background just to understand how our orchestra works. We have a budget of about $1.2 million in a normal period of time. I have no idea what our budget is right now because everything's upside down. But normally, but a little over $1 million. And we're what you call a per service orchestra. And what that means is that we don't have a full-time group of 100 musicians sitting around and playing every day, practicing and performing every night. We do a variety of series, pops concerts, masterworks concerts, outreach into the community. And anytime we have a particular program, we hire the musicians for just that program. And that actually helps us a little bit in times like this, because it's not as if we had contracted. We have 100 employees who are having to support right now. As we're not performing, we're not able to use them, and it's really bad for them, but we're doing everything we can to find ways to give them opportunities to perform, which we'll talk about a little bit later in this conversation.
So you mentioned a little bit ago, the coronavirus and, its impact. So what was the first significant impact of the coronavirus on the South Carolina Philharmonic?
Well, March, gosh, I think the virus you could see it coming at us from across the United States, and everybody experienced the same thing. It's like, is this really going to happen to us? Is it really going to happen? And then on about March 12th, I think I call it when the snowball hit the fan. We had a concert that weekend planned, and we already had musicians that were flying in from out of town. We had a guest artist who flew in from New York, and 2 days out from the concert, major organizations started canceling. The one that sticks in my mind the most was the Irish Festival downtown, St. Patty's Day. 5 Points canceled that. And when that happened, I knew it wouldn't work to try to bring 2,000 people to the auditorium to watch a concert on Saturday night. So we had a big decision to make. Do we just cancel and tell everybody, sorry you came and sorry you learned the music? Or do we go ahead and have the concert on the stage and record it? And in 2 days, we rehearsed the musicians. And right then, we didn't know yet how scary it actually might be for musicians to be blowing air at each other. We just hadn't gotten that far along in our thinking. So the musicians were very careful, but we probably had about 70 of them on stage. and we performed the concert, and the guest artist had her wonderful debut. And very surprisingly, I still don't quite know how this happened, but we had thousands of people tune in online. We did it on YouTube and Facebook, and from all over the world. We had, how you can chat on the side, people will write on YouTube while they're watching, and somebody's like, "Hello from Dubai," and I'm thinking, what are you even doing awake right now in Dubai? It must be a very different time there. And hello from Nova Scotia, and I still have no idea how this concert spread throughout the world, but it was the best possible outcome, and we actually got some national attention from it. We were featured in the Washington Post and in the nationals, a few other national publications, for finding a way to creatively get music out there in this new climate. If it had been a week later, we could not have done that concert, because then we started asking questions about, is it safe to bring your musicians together? And we realized actually it probably was not. So it was just good timing, and we're fortunate nobody caught COVID from that performance. So we pulled it off safely. But that was the beginning of a whole different world for us. So we got together and we said, well, how are we going to bring music to the community? And we can't even bring our musicians together safely. And I got a quick question for y'all, for those that I can see. What do you think the most dangerous instrument is in COVID times? And I guess you probably can't answer because you're all on mute. Who's not on mute? Donald, you're asking me questions. So what do you think is the most dangerous instrument in regards to spreading air to the other musicians?
Is it maybe like a flute or something like that?
Actually, there are a lot of jokes going around in the music community right now about the flute being the deadliest instrument, which we just think is very funny. So good guess. We've also heard oboes. I would have thought maybe a trumpet, because you're just kind of blasting away and almost spitting into the trumpet, and you would think that you wouldn't want to be at the other end of that trumpet if somebody had COVID. But that's been a really big concern with us, is how can we bring the musicians together safely? And we've figured it out, and the way we're going to do it is we're going to spread them 6 to 10 feet apart, depending on the instrument and the danger associated with the instrument. We're putting up plexiglass in between some of the musicians, which we actually do anyway to protect musicians in the front from the louder instruments in the back. And we're very fortunate. We have, you may have heard on the news this morning that there's a new COVID test out, and we have access to that test. So we're going to test the musicians the morning of the first rehearsal. And by that afternoon, we'll have the results. And if anybody tests positive, then they won't be a part of that concert. We'll have to bring in a substitute. So we have figured out a way to get the musicians back together, which has been our very first challenge. The second challenge is we have, you've probably heard in our state, there's a maximum of 250 people allowed in an audience for a performance. Well, the Coger Center has 2,200 seats. And quite honestly, we can't really afford to have large concerts in front of 250 people that bought tickets. It's just not viable. So we've been working closely with the Coger Center, and you can get exceptions to this rule if you can prove you're going to be able to distance people safely. So we have figured out we can have just under 500 people in the auditorium if they're sitting as couples or as, I call them tribes, if you're people you've been hanging out with and are okay being next to. So what we're going to try to do starting in January is to bring in audiences and have 2 concerts accommodating just under 500 people, assuming that COVID has moved in the direction that it's safe to do so. But meanwhile, we've been tackling everything virtually. So the very first thing we did after our big virtual concert is we started asking our musicians to perform from home, and we helped them set up recordings. Some of them did it from their cell phones. Some of them had more professional microphones. And we were just not prepared technically to do this maybe as well as we would have liked, but we started putting free music out to the community through our musicians. And then we also partnered with Dr. Frank Clark with Prisma, and he's a psychiatrist, and we've been pairing him doing meditation while we have some of our archival music playing in the background. So every other Friday we put out a meditation set. It's about 5 minutes where you can sit and listen to him talk you through meditation and listen to the Philharmonic in the background, which is really beautiful and peaceful, and something we've never done before. And then also, we don't have much of a visual archives. We don't do live recordings, with cameras of our concerts typically, but we do have a wonderful professional archives of audio recordings. So once a week, we also release something we call From the Archives, and Morihiko will write about or talk about the performance and some of the insight behind it, and then we'll present that. All of this has been free content to the community, and the big challenge before us now is how do we start monetizing the music again, because we can't just go forever with no funding.
So you may have mentioned it just a minute ago, and I think you did, but let's re-ask the question. Will you be able to have concerts this season? And if so, how do you plan a concert? And I think you did discuss that. So
yeah, I call it, we keep kicking the can down the road. The first thing we did, I think Dr. Fauci came on TV and said, this could last 2 weeks. And we all went, oh my God, how are we going to survive for 2 weeks with a COVID problem? And, we postponed our next concert. We were supposed to have one in April, so we moved it to June. And then it became apparent that wasn't going to work, so we moved it to August. And then your realization kind of hits as you're rescheduling and moving concerts around that the season just wasn't going to be finished. And so, based on what we've been hearing and what you've been hearing over the past few months, there's a possibility that come January, it might be, we might be on the other side of this. We might feel that it's time to put our musicians together again and to have live concerts. So we're hoping for a season from January to June, and we would do 5, what we used to call Masterworks concerts. These are a little bit smaller, so they're going to be smaller pieces because we don't want to put quite as many musicians on stage at the same time, so more chamber size. We're also planning to get together maybe one in September, one in October, one in November. We're still working out the details, but hoping to broadcast some virtual concerts, and we would still provide those for free to the community. So we're going to fill the fall with music in the safest and most creative ways we can. The virus has really helped us to look outside the traditional performance box of what we do. And we've been doing things like very small chamber events in the gardens at Historic Columbia. We've done a few there. We're in an active conversation with CWRAP, the ballpark, because there's a lot of beautiful outdoor spots there that are, the musicians are protected, not in the sun, that we can play, and that, the place is huge. So you can actually get a reasonable number of people in there to watch. So we also are toying with the idea of a drive-in concert. That's been more complicated than you might think, just because you've got to get the musicians up on a stage and you've got to have a tent over them. But we're actually going out to Saluda Shoals later this week to look at the property and see if we can find a way to have people just drive up and turn their radio on to a certain station, and we broadcast the concert into their cars while they watch. So these are things we've never considered doing before, and are really a lot of fun to contemplate. I've been talking to a lot of other executive directors across the country. Thank goodness for Zoom. And we all feel like we have brand new jobs, just totally reinventing what an orchestra is and what it can do. So that's our normal season will hopefully resume in January. And if January comes and we can't, then we kick that can down the road again.
So you asked that question earlier about the instrument that would spread it the most. Is it a saxophone?
There are varying studies that conflict, but the one that comes out the worst most often is the flute. And then the there was a test done recently where the oboe scored very poorly, and nobody's really sure why, because the oboe doesn't seem like it would be that much more dangerous than any other wind instrument. So they're actually retesting the oboe now to see if that was maybe a false result. But it's a year ago, if somebody had told me that we would be testing instruments for how much, I don't want to call it spit, but a vapor goes out, germs can leave an instrument, I would have thought they were crazy. It's just not something you really think about.
That's right. So a couple questions now from the viewers here is, how is the music timed up properly when done virtually?
How's it conducted?
How's it timed up?
Oh, like when we have a whole bunch of musicians all playing, we haven't done that. And one reason is because we're not really good at that kind of production. But I can tell you what goes into it, because we've looked into it. And pretty much you send every musician the music they're going to play, and they're wearing a kind of a click track in their ear. So they hear the music, they hear a recording of the music while they're playing, and they play with that recording. And then somebody else comes in and edits and brings all those sounds together. Because if you tried, like if all of us tried to have a conversation right now, there's a delay and it would get very confusing, as everybody tried to answer at once because they thought nobody else was answering, but they really were, but it was delayed. So, with instruments, it's not like you can put 30 people on a Zoom call and have them play together. Everybody's got different bandwidths of time with their internet, and it just wouldn't work. So it has to be pre-recorded and edited by somebody that really knows what they're doing. And we didn't feel like it was doable, but it would have been really hard and expensive, and we just didn't have the capacity to do that.
So I understand you serve on a national board. So how are other large cities handling their orchestras?
I think it's toughest for the really large orchestras because they do have, I'm sorry, there's a cat howling in the background. She's jealous. But yeah, the large orchestras have contracted year-round performers and health insurance benefits, they're full-time employees. And so they've had to furlough their employees. A lot of them have. And that's been really, really tough. Tough for the musicians, tough for the management, tough decision to make. But when there's no money coming in, no performance income coming, that's all they can do. For orchestras of our size, in the $1 to $2 million range, where we've got the flexibility to move around with the programming and change the size of the piece we're playing, the organization does better. So we're probably not going to go out of business or go bankrupt because we're not a tough ship to turn. We can navigate this. It's not ideal. None of this is ideal. And we hate not being out there, and we really hate not being able to employ our musicians, which is why, again, in this fall, we want to go ahead and start getting them together. And we're looking at paywalls, which is another term I probably didn't know a year ago, but a paywall where you're like, oh, I want to see the Philharmonic perform live on the internet at 8:00 on Tuesday, and you buy a ticket online and then you get to watch. But we're really not sure how many people are interested in watching live performances online, willing to pay for it. So it's a big unknown area for all the orchestras. A lot of us are setting up subscription paywalls. We haven't quite decided if that's what we're going to do. We had a lot of good luck when we did our March concert. We threw up a link, if you want to make a donation, donate to right now and click on this link. And we made $7,000 that night, which is about what we anticipated in single ticket income. So that worked out pretty well. But a lot of questions about how to actually pull that off. And so orchestras are struggling with those questions. And it's wonderful that we can talk to each other, but none of us has the right answers. We're just speculating together.
A viewer says, how about a flash party? That's just a comment. And how many of your musicians are full-time versus part-time? That's
a good question. The music director is full-time. So an orchestra has a two-tiered management system. I'm the executive director, which means everything I'm in charge of all the fundraising and everything administrative. And then our music director is in charge of the programming and making sure we get the right musicians together and that they're well rehearsed. And now I've forgotten what the question was.
How many are full-time versus part-time?
Yeah, so there are no full-time musicians in our orchestra, just a full-time music director. There are, now I've had a cat join me, there are some positions that are seats that are permanent, like the concertmaster. So you'd almost consider her full-time, but she actually works with multiple orchestras. She's also, I think, concertmaster maybe in Greenville. A lot of our musicians, that's how they actually make a living at this. They'll perform with us one weekend, and then next weekend they're in Greenville performing. Then the next weekend they're in Hilton Head. The next weekend they might be in Myrtle Beach. And they kind of have a circuit they work. And the South Carolina orchestras, as well as Georgia, we try to schedule concerts so they're not the same weekend, so that everybody can have as many opportunities to play as possible. But the short answer, we don't have any full-time musicians.
Having a greater reach by playing online, will this give you greater fundraising potential?
I'd like to think so, but I don't know. When COVID first hit, I thought this is it. People are going to hold on to their money because of all of the uncertainty, and rightfully so. And why would they want to support an organization that's not producing music right now? And was very surprised and delighted that all of our regular donors went ahead and gave at their usual giving levels, some even more. And we ended the fiscal year on June 30th with a surplus, which is very hard to do as an orchestra. So the giving did not go down. Now, I don't think you can continue forever asking people to give money if you're not giving them what they want, which is the live performance experience. But it is sustaining us for now.
And I'm going to try to pronounce this as Mariko also conducts another orchestra. Is he traveling or staying in Columbia?
Yeah, he is also a conductor, like an associate conductor in Spokane, Washington. And he also teaches in UMass. He's the conductor there for the university. So he really has 3 jobs. And right now, he is staying put. He's not traveling here. He is hoping to be able to travel here for the concerts we're planning in the fall to record or present virtually. But that's complicated too, because the quarantine regulations change state to state. So right now, for example, if he flew in and then flew back home to Massachusetts, they would make him quarantine for 2 weeks because he was in South Carolina, which is one of the hot states with COVID. So every plan you make and everything you do, you have to be able to plan for potential quarantine situations and not being able to leave your home afterwards. So right now he's not traveling. Everything we're doing is remotely.
So just to kind of close it down here, are you a Rotarian?
I am in the Columbia downtown chapter.
Excellent. How many years you been in Rotary?
I think since 2002. So how long is that?
18 years.
I can't even count. So quite a while. I've lost count. I've enjoyed it very much.
And then lastly, we heard a cat there, and Mary's on vacation, so I had this thing that maybe Mary took her office cat over to your house and tell us that Mary wasn't there, which is why we heard it. So, and her name is
this one. He will not let a Zoom meeting go by where he doesn't try to get on my shoulder. And this is, if it's a staff meeting or not something like this, I'll let him go on up. And you might have seen me try to stop him earlier. But this is where he spends meetings. I don't know what it's going to be like to go back to the office and not have him on my shoulder for meetings because he's.
Wow.
Yeah. I actually have 3 cats, but this is the one that loves meetings. Yes.
And then Terry Moore here says, could we host a concert on Zoom?
Could we, Rotary?
I guess is what yes.
Yeah, I don't know if we could do it through Zoom, but we could certainly find a way to broadcast it through Rotary, yes.
It would be fun to try, I think.
Yeah.
And then last, just for you, Rhonda, a tidbit of information here about traveling to Massachusetts. A viewer says they are traveling to Massachusetts in a couple weeks. You can go to Massachusetts as long as you get a COVID test 72 hours before entering the state. So I think the 2-week quarantine thing is probably over at this point.
Good, yeah.
So, well, thank you for joining us this morning. We do appreciate it very, very much.
Well, thank you for letting me chat with y'all and share a little behind the scenes of what the orchestra world is like. I know every business has its unique challenges, and we're all just in this together.
Yes, we are. So those of you that joined here on Zoom, thank you very much for being with us. And over on our district's Facebook page, good morning, and thank you for joining as well. We do these calls 3 times a week. Mondays at 11, Wednesdays at noon, and Friday at 11. Also, August is Membership and Club Development Month. And don't forget, Thursday afternoon, early evening, 5 p.m. It's our district happy hour. Information on how you get on that Zoom call is in DACDB. Make sure you bring your favorite beverage and come and join fellow Rotarians on Thursday at 5 o'clock. I will close this down with the Rotary 4-way test. Of the things we think, say, or do, is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? Have a wonderful Monday, folks. See you on Wednesday for the next conversation with Rotary Action people. Have a great day, folks.
I'm sorry, Donald. Thank you, Rhonda. Appreciate it very much.
You're welcome.